So the money actually went a lot further than just, yeah, it's always good. Yeah, that was the art teacher there. And that's an improvement over like, yeah, same with plays. You know, I'm a counselor there, and we've had students, you know, say that they feel invisible and things like that. So it was a big deal to us to, you know, try to do it. Yeah, that's what it looked like. At the front, the nice lady that gave me the name tag, she told me to go to 911. Okay.
I think it's very fun. We did one at the end of the year last year, and the students just, I think, less were amazed. They have
I want to thank you all for coming to our 4th annual Innovation in Education Breakfast. My name is Stephanie Gangopoulos, and I am the chair of the Sioux Falls Public Schools Education Foundation Board. And I wanted to take a moment this morning to thank our sponsors of our breakfast, which is First Premier and Premier Bank Card, SDN Communications, and the First National Bank in Sioux Falls. I'd also like to take a moment to thank our board members. We do not have an executive director, and so we are truly a working board, and our board members invest a lot of time. And so I would like our board members to stand, as well as Rob Swenson, who handles our media, and Angie Kuiper, who is our foundation coordinator. Would you all please stand and be recognized? Thank you all so much for everything you do for the foundation each and every day. I know that all of you in this room share our passion for education, whether you're a donor, an educator, a business leader, a community leader. And so I want to thank you all so much for being here this morning to learn more about the Education Foundation and the programs that we provide. Hopefully you had a chance this morning to talk to some of our grant recipients. They were located had tables around the room this morning. If you didn't, a lot of them will be available after the breakfast as well, so that you have a chance to go around and learn about what they'll be implementing in their classroom this next year. This morning we're going to also hear from a couple of our grant recipients, and so that will be fun to hear about what they're planning to implement. As well, we'll also hear from our superintendent, Dr. Maher, and he's going to be updating us on the priorities for the school district for this upcoming year. But first, I would like to visit a little bit about, for those of you that aren't familiar with the Education Foundation, a little bit about our programs, and our mission. So our mission is to enhance the educational opportunities and promote academic achievement among students by supporting academic projects and activities not funded by tax dollars. And we do this mainly through grant programs to teachers. And we have two primary grant programs. Our first is Beyond Books, and the second is Innovation in Education. Our Beyond Books grant program supports first-year, first-time teachers that have no classroom experience. And first-year teachers, they come into the classroom and they have to buy and supply their classroom with all sorts of things. And the costs are substantial. Many teachers estimate that they spend around $1,000 setting up their first classroom, which is a lot of money. And so these startup costs are necessary but typically aren't covered in school budgets. And so the foundation provides grants each year to first-time teachers with zero classroom experience. In 2016, we gave out about 60 grants. And next week at new teacher orientation, we're anticipating giving out 57 grants. In the past, those grants have been in the $100 range. We'd love to get it up to $1,000 someday, but we've started off with $100. We also have our Innovation in Education Grants program, and this has been in place since 2008. And the goal of the Innovation in Education Grants program is to help teachers apply advanced technology and innovative curriculum additions to their lesson plans. And since 2008, we have awarded 265 grants totaling more than $300,000. And these grant proceeds are used to purchase school materials and curriculum. And often these materials are used year after year, so the actual number of students impacted by these grants just continues to multiply each year. The grant process for this is it's a competitive process, so we receive grant applications in from teachers and electronically, and then the names of the teacher as well as the school are removed from the grants and before they're forwarded on to our grants committee. And our grants committee is comprised of former educators as well as business and community leaders. And they use a rubric to score the grants. And it's really quite an honor to be chosen for one of our grants. Last year, we were only able to fund 37% of our grant requests. And so we funded a total of $40,000 worth of grants. This morning, we have 2 grant recipients that received grants last spring. And they're here to explain a little bit about the new programs that they plan to implement. And so I'd like to invite Nathan Hollander from Roosevelt High School and Jason Whiting from Patrick Henry Middle School to come forward and tell a little bit about their grants. Thank you so much.
Balance them out. Good morning, my name is Nathan Hollander. I'm a computer science teacher at Roosevelt High School. I'm a digital architect, computational thinker, and loyal trooper to education, along with Jason. And Jason and I are both in technology, computer science, and at middle school and high school. So what I would first like to start with is just thanking everyone for sponsoring all of our projects through the Sioux Falls Education Foundation. We would have a very difficult time doing this without you guys. So we do thank you so much, and especially thank you for innovation and education for the Volare program at Roosevelt. Volare means to fly in Latin, and I think I have our site up here. The Volare project is integrating drones into education. So any teacher in any classroom should be able to come to us, check out a drone for use in the classroom to support a lesson, to reinforce content, and those kinds of things. Students could also use them to use in like a class project or something like that, but really exposing students to science, technology, engineering, and math in any subject is part of our main goal. Our classroom examples, if you go to classroom examples, and I'm gonna kind of fast forward a little bit. I've created a website in addition to our funding and the vision for what the Volare program is. This is scalable. It's not available for just one high school. This is actually available for many high schools. I've created a framework that would allow teachers in different schools, different districts, high schools across our state, and more, to be able to start a drone program in a way that really all that they need to do is find some funding, and you guys made that possible for us. Our resulting equipment from our sponsorship, if you go to the fleet at RHS, just to show you what we have purchased. Some of these we had, but we had to make sure that we reinforced our fleet with some good training drones, and 1 and 2 is going to be our training drones. I brought the Mambo here today, and I'll have a short demonstration of that here shortly. And it's durability. The example of durability.
That's why it's the training drone.
Strategically chosen for just that purpose. We also got some higher end drones. The secondary goal was to get students involved with real world activities, something that would help them see that there are many uses for drones out there, for drone services, for companies and businesses like your own. So to bring a program to the high school level and get them some real world experience is what we're all about. So if you scroll down, just going to show you what we did at the end of our school year. If you click on the isosceles right there, and I've got an example of the brochure that we gave all of our spectators that came out. We had a drone race at the end of the school year. We had student teams and teacher teams competing for the gold at isosceles. The drone race, it was in the shape of an isosceles triangle. We had connected LED lights to light up our course, so we knew where to go. And after a few weeks of safety training and practice, we got these guys out to fly these mini drones, and it was just a lot of fun, and it's something that we want to do more in the future. From the Volare project, we also formed a student club called the RHS Flight Club, and the RHS Flight Club, basically how we see this happening is Volare brings the equipment and the idea, the vision of drones in the classroom, whereas our student club is going to be the ones that are in charge of the events. So we would like to have 2 events every school year, and if we get it into other high schools, we can start competing and start hosting drone races at the end of the school year. So you can see that they had a lot of fun. Not everybody won, but we're all winners if we can get a drone in the sky, right? And not crash it too much. A couple of our other drones we're able to program, so we bring that into our classes, our AP Computer Science and Exploring Computer Science classes. This all couldn't be possible without you guys, and the site, if you wanted to easily get there, easy to remember, sufudrones.com. If you go sufudrones.com, this will take you directly to our project site, and you can see more information there. So there's tons of information packed here, packed into this website for teachers, parents, administrators, district leaders, and also for business leaders like yourselves. So our next event is in 70 days. Better start planning. If we can go down to just go to request drone services, that last, and then if you scroll down, there should be a link at the bottom for impact. So here's kind of who we're impacting, and if you scroll further, go outside organizations. Great opportunity for a partnership between your businesses and the Sioux Falls School District. We could possibly provide services for you, and if you just play that, this is where we'll end, and you can just take it from here. So if you can imagine your own business getting some footage of the outside area, you could attract new employees. You could promote a new product. Lots of great opportunities, and it's not just about entertainment. It's also about inspections, surveys for law enforcement, emergency services. You've got different types of cameras that on your higher end drones, thermographic cameras can spot on a building where it's hottest, so we could vent a house and possibly save lives inside of a burning building. So this is just one of many services. Just one more. Now with this and in your continued sponsorship for grants like these through the Sioux Falls Education Foundation, it proves that your support is valuable, and your commitment shows great commitment to our community and to education. So thank you so much for supporting us and going through the Sioux Falls Education Foundation.
All right, can you hear me without the mic? I feel like I'm loud enough. I'll still use it a little bit. Okay, my name's Jason Whiting. I am a middle school, Patrick Henry Middle School ICT teacher. For those of you who don't know what ICT is, it used to be the typing class. Now we're more, so it doesn't stand for I can type anymore. 2 years ago, we're into our third year of a new curriculum, and our new curriculum is based on being a responsible digital citizen. And so we're teaching our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders how to be responsible in this digital world that they live in. I was, prior to Patrick Henry, I was an elementary teacher at Hayward Elementary. And the first year that we had our Chromebooks rolled into our rooms and said you get to have one-on-one devices, the computer techie geek inside of me got really excited. I have a master's in instructional technology and leadership, so I had 2 years of training on how to integrate technology into a curriculum, into an everyday classroom. So when I moved up to middle school and I got to teach this computer science stuff, I got really excited. I've been writing a grant. This was my 6th or 7th attempt to get him. And this is, currently his name is Fred, because my 4-year-old daughter, when he came out of the box, said, "Oh, he looks like a Fred." So we're going with Fred until my students rename him. And my idea is that my students every year are going to give him a new name. So in 8 years, he's going to be like Bob, Joe, Frank, whatever. And they're just going to keep adding on just to kind of keep the ownership for the students that named him each year so that they're always part of him. So here's what Fred does. Fred is a humanoid robot that is 100% programmable. And I started a coding club at Patrick Henry 2 years ago when I started there. And I believe in the power of computer programming in the educational world. All right, when you hear computer programming, the most common thing I get is, "Oh, I don't know, I don't understand that stuff, I'm not good with computers." Well, the benefits of computer programming are simple, and they affect every part of education. There's critical thinking and problem solving. All right, so what a computer programmer does, if those of you that are in here, if you are in that field, you know, the programmer is given a problem, and they have to write the code to solve that problem. Okay, so what I wanted to do with Fred is we have at Patrick Henry, we have a RISE program. We have a special ed department that they have their own curriculum. We have quite a few students who are on the autism spectrum, and this robot has its own software package that is geared just towards autistic students. But on top of that, I went to my special ed teachers and I said, okay, so if I write this grant and I get it, this is what I would like to do. I would like to partner with you, and I would like you to tell me what you would like your students to learn. And it could be anything. Some of their students are learning colors and body parts and things like that. So my students can program him so that, see, when I touch him, he's interactive. Like right now, he's trying to find my face because we have face recognition. And he'll, every now and then, he'll say, "Pay attention to me," because I forget about him. But he's definitely got a personality. But what we will do is my student will program it, so the SPED teachers will tell me, this is what we want to have done. I will present that problem to my students, my 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students, and my coding club students. And I'll say, this is what we need to have it programmed to do. Go. And they will have everywhere from, if you're familiar with computer programming, what's being used in the educational world is what's called drag and drop. So it's got commands called stand, and they drag it to this workspace on their computer, plug it into the program, and they hit run, and he would stand up. Okay? All the way up to, there are 7 different computer programming languages that we can write programs in. Python, JavaScript, C++, and 5 other ones. Okay? And so I'm going to have students who actually are writing the lines of code themselves. Even in the drag and drop, they have to open up the box and manipulate the lines of code on what to make him say. So they're physically in the code, learning all the different intricacies that go between the different languages, because they're all different. It's just like speaking between English and Spanish, which, by the way, he speaks 14 different languages. And I know that his Spanish is good. My boys are at Sonia Sotomayor in the Spanish immersion program, and so I had him say, "Hello, my name is Fred. I would like to go for a walk in the park," in Spanish. I didn't tell my boys, and they said, "Oh yeah, his name's Fred, he wants to go for a walk in the park." He said in perfect accent in Spanish. So I haven't, honestly, my goal is for my students to teach me how to use him. So after this, if you want to come back, I got him set up to do a little Tai Chi and say hello to you and do some things like that. But it's very basic, because I'm going to turn him over to my students and say, this is what we need to have done. Here's the program. Let's figure this out. And I can have 30 students working on 30 different programs, and we can send them to him individually. All right, so, and if I teach 6 different periods of 30 students every day, how many students is that a day? For those of you, I know it's early for math. And actually, I could ask him if I had him programmed, and he could tell us the answer to that math program, or that math problem. But so we're going to be using him with students in Patrick Henry. I'm going to also, I've been talking to my principal, and we're going to work it out so that I can take him to elementary schools and work with early childhood. I'm going to send him out to Roosevelt and let Nathan and his students work with him so that I can be in the drone racing league. Actually, so my boys who watch Drone Racing League can do it, even though they're going to be patriots. They want to be riders because of that program. So hopefully by the time they get to high school, it's at Lincoln. But so he's going to not just be at Patrick Henry and make an impact with them. He's going to be all over the school district. And I don't have any background. I am not a computer programmer. I've taken one class. I didn't do very well in it. So the fact that I can use him means anybody can use him. All right, my wife is not. She is not a tech person. Her iPhone frustrates her, okay? But she could use this. So Nathan's going to take it. He's going to use it. Nathan's got a computer science background. But I could give this to an elementary school teacher with the program, and they could use it with their students. All right. Now Fred is top of the line. He's the best one on the market right now. So I figured if I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. Fred can fall and pick himself back up. He looks like he's fragile, but he's not. He can object recognize. I can tell him, if I show him, teach him what a red ball looks like, and he touches it, and his hands are tactile, I could send him to find the red ball in the room, and he would go until he found it. He'd bump into things and back up and say, oops, sorry. Or I'm tired, and then he'll just sit down and let his motors cool off. So, but without this group and this education foundation, I was 0 for 6 on getting this. And I shot for the moon. And it's because of this organization that my students and all the students that are going to get to interact with him are getting this opportunity. So, very grateful. See, he's looking at me right now. He's going to make a major impact. And his software updates automatically, so I don't have to purchase any new software. So it's part of the program. If there's new, it just downloads itself. So I never have to buy something new. All I have to do is take care of him. And my students have been so excited about him that, like, I've had students email me this summer, is he here? Can we come play with him? Very, very happy. So on behalf of myself and every student that he's going to impact, I cannot thank you enough. Same from Nathan, what Nathan was saying. It's because of your generosity that we get this opportunity. And I hope that you have kids and grandkids and nieces and nephews that get to hear about him. And hopefully there end up being more of him eventually. So thank you very much.
Thank you both so much. Our goal is to continue to find ways to grow our grants program, both of our grants program each year, because we have a lot of needs in our district. And so therefore, we're constantly looking for new community partners to help us meet those growing needs. And so at this time, I'd like to recognize a couple of new substantial donors that came on board this past year. The first organization is the Independent Insurance Agents in Sioux Falls, and they donated $10,000 for our Innovation and Education Grants program this past year, which was great. It really allowed us to maintain our record giving level of our grants. And so I know Sheldon's here, and I'm not sure if there are any other representatives from that agency, but if you would all stand so that we could recognize you at this time. Thanks, Sheldon. We also have an exciting announcement from the DAR, the Daughters of the American Revolution Foundation. And so at this time, I'd like to invite Bert Olson forward to present.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, everybody. I am president of the DAR Foundation, and I'd like to tell you just a little bit about our organization. The Mary Chilton DAR Foundation provides grants for projects in the Sioux Falls area and throughout South Dakota relating to the goals and ideals of the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution. This society was founded by women who had ancestors who fought in the American Revolutionary War in 1890, and purposes include funding historic, educational, and patriotic projects. The Sioux Falls Mary Chilton chapter was founded over 100 years ago, and the foundation has awarded grants for 30 years. Our board is made up of chapter members who have ancestors and a few men from the community like me. Earlier this year, our foundation board received an outstanding grant application from your foundation, and the grant was approved. So at this time, I am pleased to present to Stephanie a check in the amount of $15,000 to be used as and Stephanie will share with you how the funds are going to be used.
Thank you, Bert. We were thrilled to receive news that we were going to receive this grant this morning. And with this money, we plan to double our Beyond Books grants to new teachers. So next week, when we present our grants to new teachers, instead of giving each new teacher $100 to help defray the cost of setting up their first classroom, we will be giving them $200. And then the remainder of the money will be used for the Innovation and Education Grants program. So thank you so much to the DAR Foundation Board. I know that we have several members from that board in the audience today. Would you all please stand? They're scattered around the room. Thank you all so much. I also want to highlight our event, our teacher swap meet event that we had. And this is an event where teachers can buy, sell, and trade school supplies. And so we held our second annual teacher swap meet in June of this year. And the event just continues to grow. We hear a lot of positive comments from attendees. And we had about 80 tables of supplies that teachers were selling this year. And we had over 300 attendees. And so I just wanted to thank our former board chair, Amy Scott Stoltz, you can stand, and Avera Health for sponsoring this event. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker this morning, Dr. Brian Maher. He has led the district through an extensive strategic planning process, and he is going to share some of the priorities for this next upcoming year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thanks for being here. I want to begin my remarks this morning by saying, Nathan and Jason, where did you go? Oh, boy, stay close, because if I bomb, I want that drone flying around. I want Fred walking around. I want a distraction, so you're both on call here. I want to start with some thank yous here this morning. First of all, thanks to the foundation for all that you do. For those of you who are paying attention, you probably see that there's some momentum in the foundation. And I can tell you from the seat that I sit in, I really appreciate what you're doing. As Stephanie said earlier, there's no executive director. There isn't anybody on a daily basis taking care of the day-to-day activities to move this foundation forward. It's just good people from the community, from your community, working to do good things for the public schools. So to all of the foundation members, thanks so much for what you do. And I would say that this group today really is reflective of your efforts. I think 2 years ago, when I first addressed this group, it was probably about half of this size. I don't know for sure. Last year it got a little bit bigger, and this year I think it's even bigger yet. So hopefully before long we're at the arena. But it continues to grow, and to me that is so much a reflection of what's going on in the foundation. So for those of you involved in the foundation, thank you for your efforts. The second thing I would say is thanks to all of you for being here. As I look out, certainly I see the world of education represented to a great deal. I see former administrators, former teachers. I see current administrators and current teachers. And by the way, to the current administrators and current teachers, I apologize in advance, because what you'll see today will be largely what you'll see at the Pentagon here soon. So that doesn't mean you can skip that meeting. You'll still have to come to that meeting. But there's going to be some redundancy for you there. So thanks to, and then as I look to the cross-section of the community here, from the mayor and very broad array of business and industry here, thanks so much for being here today and for your support of the school system. And then my final thank you goes out to a number of teachers who are here. Our lifeblood, many people have heard me say in my time here, that we don't have one employment category that's more important than another. Everybody has their role to do to make our school system work. So I'm not singling teachers out because they're more important or less important than any other employment category, but they are indeed our backbone. They're in the classroom with teachers every day, and they are the backbone of what we do as an educational industry. So to all of the teachers here, thank you so much for what you do, and I hope you're rested and recharged and ready to go, because it's about time to start up again. So to the teachers, thanks for being here today. My final thank you goes to Deanne. Deanne, thanks so much for being a liaison, a conduit between the foundation and the school district and getting so much done, but also today for being my assistant in terms of getting things going here with the PowerPoint and for producing the PowerPoint. So thanks so much to Deanne. So to all of you, thank you for your roles here today. So let's talk about the vision. Where are we headed? I can tell you that through a lot of work from folks from all across the district, and with the direct support of the Board of Education. And by the way, we have two members of our board here. We have Kent Alberty and Carly Ryder both here. We have three other members of our board who are unable to make it today. Todd Tolke, Cynthia Mickelson, and Kate Parker were unable to be here. But those five folks are very instrumental in not only having a strategic plan, but making sure that it gets implemented with fidelity. But what we've done is we've put together a district vision. You hear that all the time. What's your vision? What do you see? What do you plan? And really that's the strategic plan. It's not any more or any less sexy than that. It's a set of goals. This is what we're hoping to accomplish. In fact, what I challenged our administrators to do this week is strike that hoping to accomplish, and let's commit to accomplish the goals that you're going to see in front of us today. So what are we looking at? What's our vision? Our vision incorporates improvement in the graduation rate, improvement in our attendance rate, getting better at handling and teaching appropriate behaviors in our schools, working on our staff demographics, working on student achievement, working on the engagement not only of our students but of our staff, because we want to be a dynamic workforce as well as a great place for kids to learn. And then a conversation that I'll have with you somewhat in depth about facilities. So I'll talk a little bit about each one of those today and hopefully give you a glimpse at least of what our vision is for the school district. Let's talk first about the graduation rate. Anybody who has heard me speak in the last 2 years has heard me speak about the graduation rate and how we need to take steps to reverse a troubling trend. And that trend was our graduation rate was going down, and last year it reached a low of 80.55%. So if you think about that, 20 out of every 100 kids who come into our schools leave without a diploma. Unacceptable. And I didn't talk to anybody in the community, anybody in the school district who didn't think that that was unacceptable. We talked to several people who said, but what can we do? And I can tell you what we've done really is we've taken an individual look at who's not graduating, and we've tried to get them to the finish line, as I call it, or graduation, at least that's the finish line for K-12. It's that individual approach that has our trend being reversed now, and you see that arrow going slightly up. We don't get our official statistics back from the Department of Education until September 18th, but I do know that preliminarily we've gone up about 2%, and it won't go down below that, it'll only go up from there. I would also tell you that 2% and 82, it's actually 82.51 is our preliminary data. 82.51 is still unacceptable, but we've reversed the trend, I believe. And I believe next year I'll be able to put a little greater angle on that trend line. I think we're doing things right because we have a lot of people emphasizing graduation as being critical to what we do. So we're very happy with that graduation rate in terms of growth, not in terms of a final destination yet. But we're pleased at the direction. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is attendance. Well, part of our issue with graduation is it's hard to teach kids that won't come to school. So how do we make sure that we engage kids? How do we make sure we improve our attendance rate? And there were two things that we did last year that I thought were really phenomenal. We put a lot of energy into getting kids to school. One of the things we did were we were tremendous cheerleaders last year. I think that started all the way at the governor's office, quite frankly. Governor Dugard put out last year a real emphasis on attendance statewide. We were tickled to see that in the district because that was an emphasis for us. I know Mayor Huther emphasized that from the city offices, and we certainly did in the school district as well. So we were tremendous cheerleaders in trying to get kids and families to see the importance of attending school. We also incentivized attendance. We gave away a whole lot of coupons and certificates. Some of you were probably hit up in the community to help us with that. We gave a lot of things away to kids, including bicycles in some of our schools to a couple of students for improved attendance. I can tell you we're not where we need to be yet on that. Cheerleading alone is not enough, and incentivizing, while it seems like it would work really well, doesn't appear to work that well. So we're going to try to figure out what else can we do. In some areas, our attendance was flatlined, but as of yesterday, we actually dug into some data that showed we're making some progress in that area. That progress is incremental, and I think it's really going to take some time to move the needle on attendance, but we're moving it, and we won't stop. We will not stop on this particular area. A year ago, in June, I asked the principals as they were gathered, if we could correct one thing in the district, what would it be? And you think of graduation rates and student achievement, all those things to impact. And the one thing they said if we could fix was attendance. If we could have fixed, we should, and it's attendance. Because if we can improve attendance, we think we can improve a whole lot of the other areas that we're talking about. So next steps, we'll get creative, and I love the word innovative that I've seen around here from the Education Foundation. We'll get innovative on how we try to address that issue. Another part of the vision is behaviors. When I think of the behaviors in the school district, in schools everywhere, but certainly the schools in Sioux Falls, I see a troubling trend on inappropriate behaviors. I don't think we're unique as a city to that, but I do think it's something that we need to address. I tell people when I speak to them about behaviors, because it generally follows a question, are kids changing? Maybe a little bit. Society is changing, so I suppose we're changing. I suppose kids are changing a little bit. Are the schools becoming a tougher place to be? In some regards, I think yes. But here's what I know. We are reflective of what's happening in our community. And as our community grows and is so vibrant, and you feel the economic vibrancy in the community, all the good things that are going on in the community, there's also some things that we're not excited about. Those, generally speaking, are behaviors, they're mental health related, they're drug related, et cetera, et cetera. And we've got those issues in our public schools. We are a reflection of what's going on in our community, both from the positive side, and there's plenty to speak about there, but also from the poor side, and that's poor behaviors. So we've got to continue to address the poor behavior issue in our schools. We're not where we need to be on that front, and we've got a long way to go on that area. We're trying to do a lot of different things in terms of behaviors. I'll give you one example. Tier two classrooms are something that were started a few years ago and something that have been expanded over the last couple of years. And for those of you who aren't in our schools, I'll try to give you a visual of what a tier 2 classroom is. If you think of back in the day when you were in the classroom as a student and somebody acted up, they might get sent out of the classroom and sent either down to the principal's office or to an in-school suspension room or somewhere where essentially what we did was we warehoused kids. Just get out of my room and go somewhere else. And eventually those kids would come back. Well, the tier 2 takes that to the next level. And what we do in our tier 2 rooms is really try to teach appropriate behaviors. I call it restorative justice. It's not simply a punitive measure where you acted poorly, get out. When you know how to act, you can come back. How do we know that they now know how to act appropriately if we don't teach them? So a tier 2 room is simply an extension of that teaching and learning process. It's not perfect yet, but it's a great next step. And it's focused on really meeting the needs of students. And that's what we're really trying to do to accomplish this complicated task of improving inappropriate behaviors. And I would tell you that the last item on this particular issue is this: it's unfinished business. We're not where we want to be. I don't want to over-exaggerate the problem, but I also don't want to pretend that there's not a problem. We have unfinished business in this area. The next topic that I want to talk about are staff demographics. And I believe that to talk about staff demographics, I need to start by talking about student demographics. And when I talk about our student demographics, I look back just one generation. In the 91-92 school year, so 26 years ago now, I had 25 on there because I didn't ask Fred how to subtract. 26 years ago, we had in our school district, 94% of our students were white, 6% of our students were non-white. Today, about 65% of our students are white, and about 35% of our students are non-white. And when I look at that, at those facts, I look a little bit further, and there was an article in the Argus Leader, I think in April, that talked about the diversity community-wide. And if I remember that statistic, it said that 82% of the Sioux Falls community was white, which means 18% of our community is non-white. And I thought, how could that be? 82% versus our 65%, that doesn't seem right. And then I looked at our statistics. And I look at our elementary schools, and in our elementary schools, we're 63% white and 37% non-white. So as I look at all of those data points, what I see is diversity that's growing. So this isn't a bubble of diversity that we have. It's our new reality as a city. It's our new reality as a school district. And we can talk about embracing diversity, and I think we should talk about it, but our actions need to show more than just talk. So embracing diversity. Now I'll go back one generation and look at our staff demographic. Our staff demographic one generation ago was 98% white and 2% non-white. And after that one generation of change, our staff diversity is 98% white and 2% non-white. I didn't mix up my statistics there. It hasn't changed. But also our adult population hasn't changed much yet. So our pipeline of being able to attract and retain the best and brightest teachers, regardless of race, gender, or ethnicity, it hasn't changed much. So we're doing everything we can right now to improve that pipeline, to not only have the quality of teacher that we have today, but also to have a more diverse workforce, so that our diversity in our workforce begins to look and approximate more like the student population that we have. I'm not looking at any quotas, and I know sometimes this is an uncomfortable conversation, but I think it's silly if we don't look to address the staff demographic issue as a school district. Student achievement. It's all about what we do. You notice that my PowerPoints have very few words on them, except for this one quote right here, because I think this quote is critical and I didn't want to paraphrase and get it wrong. Third grade reading achievement is a critical marker for success in our schools. We can talk about graduation rate, we can talk about attendance. I contend we can talk about behaviors. But this third grade reading mark is, if I could only pick one, I would pick this one to change immediately. And here's why. There was a study conducted by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, and that study found that a student who cannot read on grade level by third grade is 4 times less likely to graduate high school on time than a child who does read proficiently by that time. If he or she lives in poverty, they are 13 times less likely to graduate on time compared to his or her proficient, wealthier peer. So it's critical that we hit that third grade marker, that we have kids reading at grade level by third grade. I contend that we also need them to be at grade level mathematically by third grade. And I believe if those two things could happen, a whole lot of other issues could be solved. It's complicated. We're addressing it. We started, we have a number of summer programs, but 2 years ago we started a program called Summer Climb. We're seeing good results there. We'll continue to do program evaluation to see if those results are sustainable. But we're looking at a number of different areas in this particular event that we need to change. Engagement. Everything you've seen so far is about kids, and rightfully so. That's why we have jobs. That's why we do what we do. But sometimes it's easy to forget that the Sioux Falls School District is also a workplace for adults. As a matter of fact, it's a workplace for about 3,300 adults. And in our city, we're the 4th largest employer, behind Sanford, Avera, and John Morrell. Then it comes to Sioux Falls School District. So we have a lot of people making their livelihood. We're really an economic driver when you think of it that way in the community. So it's very important that we have an engaging place to work. We're really tickled. We take the Gallup engagement survey. We're really tickled to see last year we ticked up quite a little bit in engagement of our staff. That's our entire staff, every employment category. We hope to continue to see that raise and raise and raise. So all of you in business and industry, I know on some levels, we're all competing for those same workers. And we know some of you have incredibly engaging workplaces. We want to be like you or better than you so that you don't steal our staff, so that maybe we can steal some of yours in a very polite way. Facilities, and this issue I think you'll probably begin to hear a lot about in the school district. Here's a piece of information pulled directly out from our strategic plan, and it says that we want to engage the community in dialogue about enrollment trends and their potential impact on facilities. And I would say if I could rewrite that today, I would strike potential and just say on their impact on facilities, because our enrollment trends are having a tremendous impact on our facilities. Let me talk to you a little bit about that. I'm going to go through 5 different slides that develop the multiple layers that we're talking about here. What level are we talking about? Are we talking about middle level, high school level, elementary level? I'm going to talk to you about an event that happened in 1923, a little philosophical conversation, which is always fun. I'm going to talk about some input that we need to gather, and then I'm going to talk about the significance from the school district perspective of 1997. So let's start with what level. I get that question. Last year we talked about the high school and the enrollment at our high schools, and I get the question, usually a comment and a question when I would speak to civic groups. And the first comment was, oh my gosh, you need a new high school? And then that was followed by a question, where are you going to build the new high school? And I wish the conversation was that simple, but the fact of the matter is it's a little more complicated than that. Let me start with the 1100 story here. If I could count the number of seats that we have for students in high school, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, and I include the seats that we have available at Washington High School, at Roosevelt High School, at Lincoln High School, at New Tech High School, at Joe Foss, at CTE Academy, at the President's Academy, all of those seats that we have available for high school students, if I counted those up and made that number X, just hold on to that for a second. That's the number of seats. We can calculate that, right? We know that number. We have X number of seats available for our high school students in the Sioux Falls School District. And I would compare that number to our first 4 grades, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and third grade, from this recently completed school year. I would compare our first 4 grades to our last 4 grades. Remember, our last 4 grades, that's X. Our first 4 grades is X plus 1100. So if we had our first 4 grades today, if they were in high school, we would be 1,100 seats short for those students. So what do we do about that? Well, luckily, we don't have to decide today, but I think we need to begin deciding today how are we going to accommodate that growth in our school system. The second bullet point there, that's Roosevelt High School, Washington High School, Lincoln High School, Rapid City Central, Rapid City Stevens. Those are the 5 largest school buildings in the state of South Dakota. The 5 largest. Our 3 comprehensive high schools and the 2 comprehensive high schools in Rapid City. For those of you that know, please don't answer, but do you have any idea what the 6th largest school in the state of South Dakota is? It's Memorial Middle School. You might think Aberdeen Central, you might think Watertown, you might think Brandon Valley, you might think Harrisburg. No, Memorial Middle School is bigger than any other high school other than the public high schools in Sioux Falls or in Rapid City. And remember, Memorial Middle School, we still only allow them to have 3 grades there. The high schools have 4 grades. I thought that was going to be funnier than it is. High schools have 4 grades. Memorial Middle School has 3 grades, over 1,300 students in that building. A fantastic facility, and parents are not knocking on my door saying, will you please get my child out of Memorial Middle School? That's not the issue. But the issue is we're growing in enrollment. So when I look at what level, certainly at the high school level we have an enrollment issue. Definitely at the middle level we have an enrollment issue. But that 900 number, 900, that's the number of students that we have at Discovery Elementary and nearly the number of students we have in Pettigrew Elementary. 900 students is a very large elementary school. So the question is, how big is too big at the elementary level? And I would say that we have multiple elementary schools that have a lot of students in them based on the brick and mortar that they have. And so we have to look at what's the enrollment doing at our elementary level. So what level? The honest answer to that is every level we've got enrollment issues. So is enrollment our only question? You like that? Did you see how we had that working out? We've also got facilities that we've got to think about. 1923. The reason that was on the original slide is that was the year that Whittier Middle School was inhabited. So not quite 100 years old, but we can see it from where we are. It's a building that's been around a long time. And I put up there that it's seasoned rather than old, because I think old implies that it's past its usefulness, and I don't think that's true. It's not unsafe, it's not crumbling. In fact, if it was, it would probably be an easier conversation for us to have. It's a bit of a tank, quite frankly. So there's some useful life left in Whittier. My question is, as I look at the next 2 statistics, the 18 is the number of levels in Whittier Middle School. That doesn't mean stories, that just means levels. So I might go up 2 steps from this level to that level. I might go up 3 steps here. I might go down a couple steps over there. 18 different levels in that building. And that brings on all sorts of logistical issues. Chief among those are ADA issues that we have. So my question is, how long does that tank continue to serve us? 12 is the number of additions that we've put onto Whittier since 1923. And really my biggest issue here is to say, not only do we have enrollment issues as we look at our facilities, but we also have some tender loving care issues. What do we do with Whittier specifically, but also other buildings that need some tender loving care as we go forward, part of that comprehensive facilities look. And I would always be careful before I would ever say, and I don't want you to think that I'm saying we've got to get rid of Whittier. That's not what I'm saying. But I think we do have to look at Whittier and many other buildings in the school district as to what their usefulness is going forward for the school district. Next, I talked about philosophy, and I'll make this pretty quick because this I think could get really complicated. But when we talk about philosophy in conjunction with our facilities conversation, two primary areas that I think we should focus on. One is on school boundaries, and two is on school size. You've heard me address that a little bit. On boundaries, here's my point there. The issue of boundaries, as our board knows, they are charged with being good stewards of all resources that the community gives us to work with. Part of those resources are the facilities that we inhabit. And we've got to make sure that not only do we keep those facilities looking good and functioning at a high level, we've also got to make sure that we're using them to their fullest capacity. If we've got a building over here with 1,500 students in it and a building over here with 500 students in it, we probably ought to figure out how we use those resources to the best that we can use them. So boundaries is certainly an issue that we've got to take on over the next year. And then school size, the other issue. How big is too big in terms of the number of students we want in our schools? So input. I would tell you as we look at these facilities issues, these aren't decisions that a superintendent gets to make, and these aren't decisions that a board gets to make in a vacuum. Some of you may have followed this last spring. We chose to do an opt-out, and there was some controversy on that opt-out. And part of that controversy was you didn't give the community enough input on that. And you know what? As I reflect on that criticism, I think you're right. I really do. And I think I could have done more to eliminate some of that criticism. I want to make sure that we're not criticized a year from now on lack of input. So what we're doing is really trying to put together a means for input from our students, from our staff, from our community, and from our parents. And if you're wondering, aren't our parents part of our community? The answer is certainly yes. They're a pretty captive audience. We can usually get pretty good feedback from our parents. We want to make sure that we're also getting good feedback from those people who no longer have students in our schools and from those people who don't yet have students in our schools. We've got to make sure that we engage our community on just what we should do. So that brings us to really a whole timeline on how are you going to accomplish all of those things as you move forward. I would tell you that we've had a conversation at a board retreat here just a few weeks ago about specific steps to take month by month over the next year. And those steps include really kind of, August is really just figuring out where we are. We have facilities issues today that we need to take care of. So how are we going to do that? In September, we're going to talk about what's the vision look like for the future. How many drones are we going to have flying around in our buildings? How many little Freds are we going to have walking around in our buildings? And as you saw during Nathan's presentation, I thought it was so appropriate. How much of what he showed us took place in a typical classroom? Very little. So that part of education has changed significantly, and I think it continues to change. Does it change what we need from a brick and mortar standpoint going forward? I don't know the answer to that question, but I think it's something we've got to dig into deeply. October, we'll have our enrollment. We'll know our enrollment for sure. We'll also be able to project out another year. And when we talk about enrollment, I think there are a couple of things that we need to get clear on. One is, I've heard people talk about this bubble of new students that we have, and I'm not sure we have a bubble. I think we have a trend. I think we have a change in our enrollment. But in October, we'll have another year's worth of data to help try to assess that situation. In November, we'll put all this information together And most all of this will be done by district employees and will be shared publicly at a board meeting, actually at a board retreat in December with the Board of Education. So that's the plan before we flip the calendar to 2018. And in 2018, at that point, I think we will need to bring in somebody from the outside to help us have a community conversation and help us with that planning from a master facilities planning perspective, to help us with what are all of our options, what are all of our costing. And then right after that, in February and March, we have, at least today, what we've termed a Facilities for the Future Committee. This is a community committee, a cross-section of, I'll say today, about 25 people. I don't know if that's 20 or 40 or what the appropriate number is, but it's got to be big enough to be representative of our community, and it's got to be small enough to where we can still get work done, to look at all the options available to us, to talk through some of the philosophical positions that I mentioned earlier, and then figure out where do we go from there, and help take all of these options that we have for facilities and narrow it down to 3 or 4 or 5 options or whatever the magic number is, and then take those options out to the community in April and May and in June, and let our community really weigh in on what our options are in terms of improving our facilities from the school district standpoint. By then, in July, I think our board will have the opportunity to determine a scope of what a project might look like going forward. That's a lot of heavy lifting in 1 year. It may be overly ambitious, but that's the goal today. That's the vision today in terms of addressing our facilities. So, 1997, the last bullet point that I had on that slide so many slides ago, 1997 was the last year that we did a major bond issue from a school district perspective. That was the last year, and that bond issue did a lot of things. Chief among those things was providing equity from building to building across our district, and hopefully that's not something we lose sight of as we move forward. But that's the last time, 20 years ago, that we ran a bond issue. So going forward, that was on purpose that I made that very small. Do we run a bond issue? Is that something we begin to talk about? I can tell you from a facility standpoint, I believe the scope of work that's going to be required for us to continue and move forward will be much larger.
And I support you on the bond issue.
We got one vote.
You did. I support it.
We've got, so back to my thought pattern. So that bond issue, which I think we'll most likely have to have, is something that I don't get to decide, and we're a long way away from deciding, but I think it's in the offing. I think that's something that we'll ramp up conversations about as this year goes by. So with that, I would tell you that this picture Deanne found, and the picture and the font sizes are up there on purpose. We're part of the ecosystem. The Sioux Falls School District is part of the ecosystem of this wonderful city. When I think of this community, and I think about it on a large scale, I don't want to say our piece is insignificant, because I don't believe that. But I believe we're just part of a larger ecosystem that is the Sioux Falls community. And that's what the context this conversation has to take place in. So we're happy to be part of that ecosystem as well. And finally, I think of why do we do what we do? Well, certainly it's because of kids. But when I think of all of those vision pieces, when I think of demographics, when I think of achievement, when I think of attendance, when I think of moving that metric, and I'll use graduation as the example here. I'm so happy to be able to tell you today that our graduation rate is rebounding and moving more in a positive trend. I can't wait to talk to civic groups about that. I can't wait to thump our chest and say, look at us when it comes to graduation rate. But I can tell you that the only way that needle moves is if we make a difference for kids. And people find that to be a trite saying sometimes, that's for the kids, but it really is. And let me tell you what a 2% increase in graduation means. If our graduation rate would have stayed the same last year to this year, 32 kids who have a diploma today wouldn't have had a diploma. That's what that means. It means 32 kids have a diploma, a Sioux Falls School District diploma. That's why we want to continue to emphasize that. It truly is about kids. And what we're about in the Sioux Falls School District is incredibly meaningful work. It's about human development. That's what we're in the business of. Teaching and learning, yep, all those things, human development. That's what we're in the business of. We're so happy today that all of you gave of your time and talent to be here with us and help us on that quest to develop those young human lives in our community. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of the solution.
Thank you, Dr. Maher. We appreciate your leadership and vision, and our board members here too for the tough decisions that are ahead. We're transitioning the program just a little bit now to talk about what we as a community can do. I'm Vernon Brown from SDN Communications, and we're one of the supporters of the Education Foundation. And I'm here to introduce my former colleague, Jay Huizinga, who leads Kello TV. So we worked together back in the day. And so sometimes I darken Jay's doorstep asking for help on good community projects. You might notice he holds onto his wallet tightly whenever I get near him now. But to Jay's credit, I don't think he's ever told me no, because I only bring the good opportunities to him. And Jay has become sort of an evangelist for our organization. Last year, Kello TV honored the Education Foundation by doing PSAs, the Kelloland Cares PSAs, public service announcements, about the organization and what our mission is. That afforded us more name recognition than we could ever afford to buy. And our purpose is really to drive any money we bring in to the grants. And so Jay is here to talk about why, as a business person, as a business leader in the community, he invests in public education. So please welcome my friend Jay Huizinga.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity and to have a few minutes to speak to you today. Before I get started, I want to thank Dr. Maher for his leadership. I've seen him speak a number of times through community events, and we have the right leader with the right vision, and I don't think we could be luckier as a community to have a leader like Dr. Maher taking us through the future. So thank you very much. So I already lost the mayor. Hopefully the rest of you will stay just for a few minutes. I don't have a PowerPoint, so you're lucky for that. About 10 years ago, I think, I was having lunch with Steve Herman, who was sitting at the table, and he was telling me about this organization, the Sioux Falls Education Foundation, and I was like, oh, that's very interesting, and yeah, we give grants, and we help teachers out, and I'm like, well, why does the school district help the teachers out? And, you know, the usual questions you'd get when you first heard of something like this. So we had conversations over a few years, and then my good friend Vernon Brown darkened my door, as he said, and started talking to me in a little more earnest fashion about that. And when Steve Herman and Vernon Brown double team on you, you're eventually going to give them money. So I can tell you if they show up together. So when I was talking to Vernon about it, we got a little bit more serious about what the needs were for the foundation. And so we became a donor, and we've been a donor for, I can't tell you how many years, I don't keep track of that type of thing, but we became a donor, and you know, the best thing about being a donor besides giving the money is seeing where the money goes. So each spring I've been invited to help Vernon go to a school and give away a check, and the last spring when I was able to do that, I had Jason, I gave Jason the check for, what's his name, Fred? You can call him Jay too. I mean, seriously.
I can push that with my students.
Yeah, well, yeah, let's have a vote or something. So, but anyway, I had the opportunity to have him take that check, and just listening to his enthusiasm, he didn't even have it yet, and listening to the enthusiasm that he had was really quite amazing. So, and as I was looking at the slide when the two gentlemen were up there and they were showing the grants and the pictures, it was a picture of that check proposal, and I kept looking at that going, what's my dad doing up there? I couldn't believe it. It was like, wow. And then I realized that that was me from last spring. So it was a great experience. And I told the teachers this at the time, and I really, truly believe this, and I'm going to disagree with Dr. Maher on one thing. Teachers are the most important employee that we have. They're more important than any employee I have, I can tell you that. I believe in public education. I believe in it because I was a product of public education. But what we do to take our children and get them off to teachers who are so dedicated and then sometimes have to spend their own money to educate our children is something, a profession that I don't think there's a higher calling. And I truly believe that about all of our teachers. So I have a personal interest in this. My granddaughter, Emmy, is going to start in kindergarten at Sonia Sotomayor in just a few weeks. So I'm very excited about that, and she's very excited. She's already been through the school and met some of the teachers and knows where the lunchroom is and all that type of thing. And she couldn't be more thrilled and excited about that opportunity. Her brother, who's 2 years behind her, is going to follow her there, and we're really, really excited about that whole opportunity. So I'm here to tell you that as a corporate donor at Kello, not only do we give money, but as Vernon said, we gave a grant through our Tradition of Caring grant. And what that really does is tries to get the information out on necessary nonprofits within the community. And so we do that statewide, but we really have an affinity for the Sioux Falls Education Foundation in that particular venue. So we're going to be doing that again this year. Applications are in October, but I think I can get that one through. I have a little general manager's privilege, so I think the Education Foundation probably is in good shape from that standpoint. So we want to do that. We also want to give money, but I can tell you, because of the importance of what we do and what the teachers do in this community, if you're not giving to the Education Foundation at this time, I really encourage you to do so. And if you are, I encourage you to increase that. This organization does a lot to help teachers. Teachers do a lot to help our students, and our children are our most important asset. So I thank you for the time. I thank you for listening to me. And if there's anything I can do to help the Education Foundation, they certainly know where to find me. It's been a great thrill and a great honor to be part of the organization. Thank you.
So that's how your businesses can give, but also we can do things personally ourselves. And you'll find materials on the tabletop there that envelopes that you can write in what you'd like to give. But I also encourage you, we are seeing some success in estates remembering the foundation. One quick story, a friend and neighbor of mine, Beth Boyens, when her mother died, they decided that their estate, her mother's estate, would leave something for the foundation as well. I had the privilege of going to an elementary school where she got to present a check in memory of her mother. Her mother was a reading teacher in the Sioux Falls School District for many years. There was nothing more touching than watching her have her mother live through that program that she was gifting in the school district. So I encourage you to think about those possibilities as well. We appreciate your time today, and we appreciate your consideration. Thank you, and thank you for helping us get momentum in this organization. We really appreciate that.